The Pharmcast is a podcast sponsored by the Maryland Pharmacists Association. I'm your host, Aaliyah Horton. I'm the Executive Director of MPHA. And in my role, I have the opportunity to meet so many fascinating people within Maryland and around the country that are engaged in the practice of pharmacy. They're stakeholders, they're innovators, collaborators, and advocates. And this is my opportunity to bring those conversations and experiences to you. And it's another way that MPHA is fulfilling its mission to strengthen the profession of pharmacy, advocate for pharmacists, and to promote excellence in pharmacy practice. My hope is that at the end of these conversations, you will leave informed, engaged, and connected to pharmacy and our Maryland pharmacy community. Hi, welcome to the Pharmcast. Today's guest is Karin Hurt, CEO of Let's Grow Leaders, where she inspires courage, confidence, and innovation. She's a former Verizon wireless executive. She's known for growing courageous leaders, building great cultures, and inspiring high-performance teams. She's an award-winning author of 5 books, including Courageous Cultures and Powerful Phrases for Dealing with Workplace Conflict. And she was also named as Inc.'s great leadership speaker for our highly interactive keynotes and executive programs. So welcome, Karin, to the Pharmcast.
Thank you so much. This is so much fun. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. And so I usually like to introduce how I've met the folks that I'm interviewing or how this connection came up. So Karin and I are actually in a class with the same trainer that we do online workouts with. And I remember, I don't know if it was early last year, but something was going on. He fusses a lot. And something was going on, and Karin had missed some classes. And I remember you saying, oh, well, we're going on this international book tour, and I've just been really busy. And if anyone knows me, they know as soon as I hear something like that, I'm on the internet Googling to figure out what's going on. And so we have a really cool class. And so as I was looking it up, I was like, oh, wow, Karin does a lot of work that overlaps within the association industry and has a lot of impact on leadership development. And that's something that's really important for any professional society, regardless of the practice setting. So I delved a little deeper and was like, oh, this is really interesting. And the book that she was going on this tour for was the powerful phrases for dealing with workplace conflict. And so the other part of this is, so I got the book and I was like, oh, this is fantastic because within our industry, within the pharmacy workplace, particularly in community pharmacy, there's a lot of disruption, a lot of churn. It's a challenging workplace right now. And there is conflict between the pharmacists that are working in the pharmacies, the folks that you see, what they call, that are working the bench, and those that are in higher leadership positions that have to deal with more of the corporate culture, let's say, and have to implement what's happening at the corporate level versus the folks that are working in direct relationship with patients. And so I thought this is really great. And so then I am actually currently president of the National Alliance of State Pharmacy Associations, which is the membership as the state of pharmacy associations, and essentially my colleagues are the execs. And so this January, we used the book and we created our own workshop. We couldn't afford you, Karin. But we put together a self kind of a NASPA by NASPA work group where we talked through the book and some areas where we could help each other and use real life scenarios. And so it was really a peer kind of working group that was really cool. So that's like the big picture and kind of why I wanted you here because we really benefited from this conversation. I think others can too.
I love it.
Yeah, so I wanted to throw it to you to talk about how you came up with this book, the kind of disruption that's happening in the workplace and how this came about and where you are now with it.
Yeah, so we were noticing was we were working across a variety of industries, including a lot of work in healthcare, all over the world. And, right after the pandemic, and we thought, Is it our imagination, or is there more conflict happening now than only a couple of years ago? And we don't do anything that is not research based. So of course, then we like, all right, well, we better figure it out. Like, what is going on? So we did the World Workplace Conflict and Collaboration Survey to see what is happening in the world. And our gut was right. Yeah, there is more conflict. 70% said they're experiencing the same more or significantly more conflict than they had just prior to the pandemic. But the interesting thing, and you've mentioned this, the conflicts are getting more complicated.
Hmm.
And so you mentioned, well, you've got the people who are on the bench and you've got the people who are in, more corporate roles, and they've got changing regulations and changing insurance and changing all these dynamics. And I would imagine you also have changing, frustrated patients,
Yes.
right? And they're like, well, wait a minute, this prescription used to be available this way or that way. And now why is it this cost and that? And the people on the bench are dealing with that. They're dealing with this, right? And all of that is what we would call a conflict cocktail, right?
Hmm.
It's not just one thing. And so also the humans are experiencing, increased mental health and anxiety as a lingering from the pandemic. What is happening in the world politically is dividing us and creating more conflict and frustration for many. People are nervous about the future, about what's going to happen. My sister works in healthcare. I know, like she's always
Hmm.
like, what the heck is going to happen next? And there's so much uncertainty. And all that makes it harder to deal with conflict. And so we also asked people to think of a significant workplace conflict that they had in the past, and what advice would they give their former self if they were faced with that conflict again.
Hmm.
And the biggest number, more than half of the people said I would stay calm, and then 21% said I would talk about it or talk about it sooner. Well, the thing about staying calm is that nobody ever got more calm by somebody telling them to calm down, right?
That's a fact.
You need skills. You need skills to stay calm, and you need skills and techniques to talk about it, have the courage and confidence to talk about it, and to talk about it in a way that's going to get you the results that you need. Because conflict in itself is not bad. Conflict is just like, I see it this way, you see it that way, I have a different point of view. My husband and co-author David Dye and I have conflict all day long, right? And we're married, we're building this business, we write books together, we do research together. We have different personalities, we have different points of view. I'm usually the one that's looking far out, going fast,
Hmm.
moving towards a vision. He's operationalizing. In that is inherent conflict, right? Slow down, Karen. We got to get it right. Why are you going so slow? We got to get it fast, right? And so just to think about, how do we give people really practical tools to do that well? So that's why we wrote the book, to be helpful in that arena.
And just to jump on something you said, and I just want to point this out, as I was thinking about our young professionals and the pharmacists that are transitioning out of pharmacy school. They have all of the technical clinical needs and skills that they need. And
Yeah.
they also experience leadership development and professional development as they go through pharmacy school to get their doctorates of pharmacy. But as you talked about this conflict cocktail, and you can imagine coming out of school, you're ready to practice and you're stepping into all of this. And one of the things that I found in the feedback that he got from our little mini workshop that we did is that the tools and information that are in the book give that level of confidence. It's almost like a formula to approach addressing a conflict, giving that confidence to address the conflict sooner than you would, just like you said
Yeah.
when you're talking about your past self.
Yeah.
I could definitely see that. And even since we've done this workshop, there are some things I may have sat on a little while longer, but felt a bit more confident. So can you talk about the dimensions of conflict and how to walk through those points to address it?
Yeah. So you mentioned getting the confidence. So I just want to start there because, one of the things I always, when people come to me, I ask them to think about these questions. If they're like, I don't know if I should go there, I think it's just better to let sleeping dogs lie. I'm like, all right, why does what you have to say matter? What's at stake if you stay silent? And imagine you've had the conversation and you've been heard. You may not have gotten everything you wanted, but you've been heard. Every time I ask an audience those three questions, and I
Mhm.
just say, like, okay, shout out, how will you feel when you've been heard? Like, 1,000 people in the audience. Everybody goes, relieved, right?
Yes.
That's what I want for the people who are listening to your podcast is to have the courage to have that conversation and get to that relief. So let's talk about the
Hmm.
4 dimensions. Okay. So the first is connection. Are we connected as human beings? Now, this connection really happens at 2 levels. It's the connection that you have before you're even in any kind of a conflict. I mean, and it doesn't have to be deep, deep connection, but I mean, you and I have a connection because we have a shared interest, we have a shared history, we know some of the same crazy, right? Like we have, we, but so if we were one of us were to do something or say something awkward on this in this podcast, we would give each other the benefit of the doubt because we
Hmm.
are connected, right?
Hmm.
And so I think that's the first thing is so how can you build these relationships before you need them? Can you get to know people's pets and people, pets and projects? Can you get know a little bit about what motivates them, right? What are their interests? And then it's connection in the actual conversation. So, and we talk about, I'm wearing this goat whisper if you're
Oh,
watching this,
yeah.
so we talk about goats, greatest of all time, powerful phrases, but a connection goat is just a way to de-escalate the conversation by connecting. So if somebody comes to you and they're super fired up and like they walk into your office or cube or they turn on the Zoom and they are fired up, mad about something. And if the first thing you say is, wow, sounds like you're really upset about this. Can you tell me more? Tell me
Hmm.
more is one of our favorite goats because the reason people get louder in conversations, either actually louder or metaphorically louder, is
Yeah,
because
because you,
they're heard.
right.
So,
Someone says simmer down, like that's not
right,
going to
first thing you
solve
say is,
anything.
I am listening. And
Yes.
in fact, I'm listening so much. You already told me a bunch of stuff. I want to hear even more, right?
Hmm.
De-escalates. So that's the connection. Another is to, reflect back. This is really good. If you are on the bench and you're dealing with an angry customer, the last thing you want to do is immediately just lean into the conflict and tell them, well, that's what your insurance is, or that's what the policy says, right?
Hmm.
Say, I can tell that this is really frustrating to you. And I can only imagine, like I can only imagine how this must feel from your perspective, right? Show me that you get why I'm ticked off here, right?
Right.
And then, you may still have to deny whatever it is that they want, but at least you have connected at a human level, right?
Hmm.
That's mostly what we want. The other day I was dealing with some company. I just was like, just acknowledge that you screwed this up. I will calm down if you just tell me, so it happened to be a new,
Right.
just moved to Colorado.
Hmm.
They broke a piece of my furniture. And there was like, they're like, well, we broke it. Insurance, it's below the deductible. Insurance isn't going to cover it. I'm like, please say you're sorry. like my
Right.
my nice little thing.
Hmm.
So connection. The next is clarity. And this is, do we have a shared understanding of success? Now, this one is so vital because most conflict comes from an expectation violation of some sort, right? I
Hmm.
expected that when we did our one-on-one, you would have your camera on because I think that's just good couth. And you're like, I'm going to give us both a break. And this way, nobody has to put on lipstick. And we're just going to, because we know each other so well. Well, but if I take that personally, because we haven't set the expectations of, well, are
Right.
we going to have our cameras on or off? With remote work, this is such a big issue right now. I'm hearing my phone is literally ringing off the hook from senior executives saying, "How do we teach people to have a little couth around here?" And it's just, but all it is expect. It's just, well, I'm like, but
Hmm.
have you told them that they can't wear the hoodie to the board meeting?
Oh,
Like,
goodness, yes.
yeah. Have you told them? But they should know. Okay, they should
Hmm.
know, but do they know? And have you set clear expectations? So that's clarity. My favorite goal for clarity is, what would a successful outcome do for you? And why I like this is because we often talk about, well, what does success look like, right? We're beginning a project together. What does success look like? But imagine our boss hands us a project on Monday
Hmm.
and says, and we know exactly what success looks like. But we take 5 minutes and we say, what would a successful outcome do for you? And you say, you know what, Karen? I got to tell you, I have been traveling like crazy. I have not been home. I've had to miss 4 workouts with Troy. I am
Hmm.
working so hard. What successful outcome would do for me is that we are done by 5 o'clock on Friday. so I can go to do the grinder. I don't want to miss it again.
Yeah.
Right. And I say, okay, that, maybe I haven't had a crazy time, although I wish that were true.
hmm
Maybe I haven't had a crazy time. And I'm like, and I would have been willing to work all weekend because this is so important. But now I know that about you. But now you say, well, what would a successful outcome do for me and you? And I say, you know what? I don't think our boss really sees how smart I am about this stuff. Like this, I am an expert in this. And so when we do this presentation to the senior team and the really tough questions come, can you let me handle a couple of them? Just so they know that I contributed to this project, that I do have a depth of breadth of knowledge around this. And you're like, oh, sure. You want to take the hard questions? Go for it, right? I
hmm
don't want the hard questions, right? Or whatever. So now we have just taken these expectations that we had with one another, but probably would have been unlikely to have talked about it and might have created conflict if you jumped into that senior meeting and started answering all the questions,
Right.
right?
Like, what the heck is going on here?
Right. And you didn't mean to, you just happened to have
Right.
the, so you were trying
hmm
to hurt me, right? So that's connection, clarity. The next is curiosity. And this one is so important because it is really impossible to be genuinely curious and really furious at the same time, right? So,
Interesting.
so you go in and you say, all right, I wonder how this looks from your perspective. All right, because you're association in the
hmm
association business, I have to share this
Okay.
story with you. So, David and I were doing a program for an association. The program is called Executive Ready. So the people who were in the program were all people who had been nominated. It was a credit union association.
hmm
They'd all been nominated by their CEO to join the program to get ready to take on a role that started with C, like CEO, CIO, CHRO.
hmm
It's a 6 month in-person program. I mean, we're not together for 6 months, but on and off for
Yeah.
6 months. We're going to be working with these guys for and women for a very in-depth time. So we started slow, really with, getting to know each other. Why were people there? So we were building that sense of community. And we have a really high energy exercise where we give people a best practice card and they vote with each other's best practices with light bulb stickers. The reason I share this is the room is always like, blah, like,
hmm
busy, energetic. People are excited. They're laughing. They're putting stickers on their forehead, all kinds of stuff, right? There is one lady and she's just sitting there like this, like totally as small as she could possibly be. And then I went to hand her the microphone to introduce herself. And she's like, no, 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 I do not want the microphone. And I'm like, what is going on with this lady? She
hmm
is not executive ready. And what credit union is she with? And how am I going to find the CEO? Because I got to call him or her and talk about this because I do not need this in my life for 6 months, right? So I have all kinds of assumptions. I call a break. I say, hey, I did a goat. I'm curious, how's the program going for you so far? What does this look like from your perspective? And she said, I got to tell you, this morning before about 8:45, there was a line of people lined up before the doors opened. The doors opened. I followed this group of people down the hallway, up the stairs, sat down. I am a credit union member, a customer, here to pay my bill. I am clearly in the wrong
Gosh.
place, right?
Oh my gosh.
But I did it. I had made up so many stories and I wasted so much time and energy being
hmm
fired up about a situation that wasn't even true. And how often do we do that? So we assume people's intent. So to just stop and say, what does this look like from your perspective? And then the
And that
last
brings in the four agreements too.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then finally is
hmm
commitment. And oh, it's practically Groundhog Day. So this is since if you've ever been in one of those Groundhog Day, well, at least we're filming it on practically Groundhog Day, which is something keeps happening again and again and again.
hmm
Well, have you ever been in a conflict like that? You're like, we talked about it, and here we go again, same conflict. And so one of the reasons is that you're not moving to a shared agreement. Okay, so what is one next step we can agree to? All right, all right, we've both agreed we're going to show up differently in our meetings to each other. We're going to actually, we're going to be active listeners in our staff meetings. Even though we disagree a lot, we're going to be active listeners with one another. We have 2 more staff meetings between now and the end of March. Why don't we go ahead and set time on the calendar, 3 o'clock on Friday, March 27th, and talk about how it's going.
Hmm.
And now if we both are looking at our calendar and we're like, oh, we have to talk about that thing, we're more likely to do what we said we're going to do. But if one or the other of us does not meet our commitment, neither the other person doesn't have to muster the courage to initiate another conversation because we've already scheduled it. And if we do what we said we do, we look each other in the eye and say, hey, cool, we did that thing. High
Right.
five, right? Good job. So those are the dimensions of conflict. And why they're so important is when you are in a conflict, one of the best things you can do is say, what's going on? Is it we have a connection problem? Do we have a clarity problem? Do we need to be more curious? Or are we not moving this conflict to a shared agreement?
And I think um, in our workshop that we did, they were all of these components were spot on. But I think that commitment piece is what I heard back from our group was that people weren't closing that part out.
Oh,
They
interesting.
had gone through all of those pieces, but there wasn't that firm commitment of the shared understanding of the shared expectation. And that was really interesting to me. And so people really thought through, like, okay, I need to go back and have this conversation and close that piece out and close out. We're going to talk about this again, or we've agreed to meet at this time, which is very different than a deadline. And I
Yes.
think that was the kind of light bulb moment that everybody had. That
Yeah.
was really interesting for us.
Good. I'm so glad. Did you download the PDF that
Yeah,
you?
we
Oh,
yeah,
good.
yes. We were it was like I said, it was a peer activity and we sort of used every resource that we had to kind of pull it together.
I'm so
Um,
glad. That's why we wrote it. That's what,
yeah,
so,
and
so
so the tools and there are a lot of times you get these kind of books and they're great. You go through, you mark them up, you tag them up, you highlight them, but the resources that you provide in collaboration with the book was really, really helpful because I think, and my thought, and you're not supposed to assume, but my thought was that yes, you're available to do the speakings, do the workshops, but you want everyone to be able to use the resource. And so
yes.
this really provides some equity and access that was, I would say that we really appreciated.
Oh, good.
And one of the staff members that kind of worked on the slides just had so much fun with the goats. And so we'll talk about that because, when you think about GOATs, the greatest of all time, you think of Serena Williams, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady. And you highlighted a little bit in those C's, but the GOAT phrases
Yeah.
and what that means for
Yeah.
you within
Yeah.
those
So if you're,
dimensions.
first of all, if you are listening, you can go to conflictphrases.com and download free resources. And there's templates for goats,
Hmm.
make your own cocktails, discussion questions. So grab those. And so in that, there's one page and it has the 12 goats. So we have greatest of all time powerful phrases. So in our book, the book is really designed to be a resource. So you can look at the table of contents and say, what's happening? Go to the chapter that's the problem. My boss is yelling F bombs at me. There's a chapter for that. Somebody stole
We got a
credit for
kick out of that one.
my, all this stuff comes from real clients, right?
Hmm.
um, somebody stole credit for my idea. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I need to say no. All of these are scenarios. And then there's lots of phrases that you can use that are around the dimensions. But we wanted to have a couple of phrases that you could use in almost any, because what if you're somewhere and you don't have the book, right? And so can you memorize a couple of go-to phrases that feel authentic for you?
Hmm.
And so there are three goats for every dimension. And what we encourage people to do is to feel like which of these do feel really natural for them, and then just even if you pick one goat for each dimension, could be good. So I've been modeling a couple of those, right? So the tell me more is a goat. The it sounds like you're feeling, the reflect to connect. And another connection goat is, and I really, really like this one, but it's got to be done carefully and with sincerity, which is I really care about, and then you insert the thing that you really care about. Now, it may be that your relationship, it might be the human, and but if you don't really know them that well and you say that, that's gonna be
Hmm.
disingenuous. But you could pick something else that you really care about. So, hey, I really care about this podcast going as good as it can, right? Or I really care about the success of this project. I really
Hmm.
care about our customers and reducing wait time, whatever it is that you really care about. And I'm confident we can find a solution we can both work with here. And I will do this a lot when I'm working with executives. And because sometimes really a lot of there's a lot of conflict. When the stakes
Hmm.
get higher, the conflict escalates. So what can you got two executives, what is it that you both really care about? Okay. Now let's take that common ground and use that to ground this conversation. And you will find that that really
Hmm.
does de-escalate. So that those are the connection goats. The clarity goats, what would a successful outcome do for you is certainly a clarity goat. Another is what's one thing we can both agree on here, right? Like, so getting to that level of clarity, what would it, so getting to really setting clear expectations for the conversation, for your work together. The curiosity goats is where you're asking open-ended curiosity
Hmm.
questions like, what would a successful outcome do for you here, right? So and I'm curious how this looks from your perspective. You
Yeah,
can,
that one was the really that was another one, excuse me, that resonated with our group because as executives in working with staff, a lot of the conversations we had were around staffing and sort of having set out expectations, laid out a plan, all of these things, and then getting a response. And people are going, well, how did you come to this? Like, how are you not understanding it? But having better words to
yes,
communicate where the disconnect is and giving the person the opportunity to explain it without putting a sort of a negative pressure on them,
yeah,
but saying, I'm curious to understand, like, where's your perspective on what you contributed here, or why you didn't contribute, or what is going on.
yeah,
And folks found that phrase to be really, really
yeah.
helpful.
And it works with your kids too.
Oh
So,
gosh, yes, I've
so
been using,
you've
let me
heard of,
tell you, in my house, this book has been utilized across the board. I have a 14-year-old and a 22-year-old in very different kinds of conversations, a middle schooler and a young adult who's figuring out how to kind of navigate the world.
yeah.
And yeah, the phrases have been very helpful. I'm glad you
So
brought that up.
you've heard of Sebastian. You've heard
And the
Troy
husband.
yell at
Hmm.
Sebastian, right? Well, Sebastian is in college. He just went to his freshman year in college.
Hmm.
And so over Chris, so we just moved to Frisco, Colorado, which is a small town in the mountains of Colorado. And we did, he was here, home from school, and we went to a visioning workshop, like one of those, you create a vision for your
Oh yeah.
year,
Hmm.
pictures. Couldn't believe I got him to go with me, right? But we go to this workshop in this new small town, and he's a musician, he's an actor, he's going to a fine arts school, right? And this woman goes, oh, my boyfriend is running an open mic night. Now this kid loves to do open mics,
Hmm.
and so I'm like looking at him like, like network, dude, right? And so we get in the car and I say, Sebastian, like, why didn't you network? Like, I teach you how to do this. And he looked at me and he goes, Mama, aren't you going to ask me how this looks from my perspective? And he said, here's the thing. This is a tiny little town.
Hmm.
If I go and bomb at the open mic night, I'm going to be living here for the next, and he's like, I
Hmm.
only got one shot at this. I'm only a freshman. Why don't I come back? I'm not going to spontaneously. I want to come back with my type five, my da 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 da.
Hmm.
Perfectly reasonable explanation, right? So, but even though I thought I didn't show up curious with him, which would
Hmm.
have been a better mother thing to do because he wasn't wrong, right? And then and then the commitments. This is really where you're doing what we call schedule to finish. And to like you said, that was what made the biggest difference. And a lot of times when people are feeling overwhelmed, we also teach this in our leadership courses. So if I say to you, "Hey, I need this data from you. Do you think you can get it for me by Friday at 3 o'clock?" Now, if you say, "I can't because I have all this other stuff going on," Well, that's better for us to have that conversation. So now if I'm your boss, well, now I'm helping you reprioritize it because it's not negotiable, or maybe it is negotiable. But
Hmm.
the idea is to schedule a time where we're both going to put that again on the calendar, and I'm going to get this data back from you at 3 o'clock. So now you're looking at it and you go, oh, I'm not going to make that deadline. You're not waiting until you miss the deadline to have that conversation.
Right.
Yeah, so that also can prevent a lot of conflicts. So those are some of the goats.
Yeah, that's been really helpful. And we have been joking since we did the workshop. Everyone, people will say, "Oh yeah, I had to use the goat phrase in this conversation." Um, so I can't tell you enough like how useful this book is and how excited I am about it. And one of the things I didn't mention at the beginning, um, or maybe I did in your intro, but about the courageous culture. So I think a lot of folks at least within the association industry, and we do have association kind of generalists who listen to this podcast, they are very familiar with courageous cultures. And so this is sort of a next step that is appreciated. Um, I just totally lost my train.
Well, so it's a common question people
of-
will ask you is that where does house courageous cultures and powerful phrases fit in? Is that
Yes,
what you
yes,
asked?
yes. Thank
And
you.
so courageous cultures is really designed more for executives, for leadership. How do you create? So the subtitle is How to Build Teams of Micro Innovators, Problem Solvers, and Customer Advocates.
Hmm.
So how do you in your association? How do you in your hospital? How do you in your, whatever your company create an environment where people feel safe and encouraged to share their ideas? And it does that in very practical ways. Dr. Amy Edmondson of Harvard wrote is really considered to be the pioneer of psychological safety research. She wrote the foreword to Courageous Cultures, and she says, psychological safety and courage are really two sides of the same coin, and both are needed in an uncertain world. So you need leaders making it safe, but that's not enough. You also have to give people the practical tools to do that.
Hmm.
So powerful phrases answers that. It's does anybody, you don't have to be a leader. You could be you could be an individual contributor. You could be, at any level of the organization, and you're using these phrases and using them in your life. And so it's encouraging courage in that way.
Yes, and that's what it was. I was going to mention that what's also useful about the book is that it is for anyone within the organizational structure, and there's information for how to get yourself out of the conflict, like when it's time to whether it's to remove yourself from a role, just remove yourself from the conversation. And so helping people to assess that so that you're not only de-escalating, but also kind of protecting yourself. And so I
Yes.
thought that was really helpful as well. And the other thing that I wanted to mention for the listeners is that I actually did half read and half audiobook. And the audiobook sounds exactly like how Karen's talking now during this podcast. So it's very engaging. So I did enjoy that. So I wanted to mention that to you.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good. It's funny because I wasn't sure about this book for audio because because it's also designed to be as a reference. Like, what's your
Hmm.
conflict? Go to the chapter. But I am hearing a lot of podcast listeners say they prefer the audio version, and they'll say, "I feel like you're riding around in my car with me, giving me courage."
Yes. It's fun. It was a fun listen
Okay,
for
good.
sure. So I think we're just about out of time. And so, but one of the things that I do in this podcast is ask people about their self-care routine. So this podcast was also just came out just prior to COVID.
Hmm.
And during that time, I was hearing a lot from different people within our membership, as well as other association executives starting to get burnt out. And then COVID hit and it just sort of got exacerbated.
Yeah.
And so I'm asking people just for myself, for others to just learn what other people are doing to take care of themselves, to protect their spaces. And so just wanted to ask you, what do you do for self-care? I think I know one of the answers, but go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, let me tell you, I don't have it fully handled.
Hmm.
And I think that is common of people who are sort of aggressive with aggressive careers and ambitious. But so I always say that because I don't want to make it look like it's easy. And like what I'm about to go do is I'm going to fly to Kentucky, and I'm still got the PowerPoints that I got to do, and I got to meet with the executive. Like what I have on my list
Hmm.
today, there is no self-care going to be involved at all today.
Okay.
And I've been up since 5 o'clock this morning, right? So, but what do I do? And I do really try to prioritize on most days. And then part of what I do on it for self-care is on days like this, I don't beat myself up. I'm like, you're doing the best you can. So
Hmm.
part of that is make your intention, do what you can. And then if a day goes by and it's not your ideal day, do the best you can. And then tomorrow, I've already figured out when I'm going to work out tomorrow morning before I go into the meeting at the hotel, right?
Okay.
So that's the first thing. And one is definitely, it is exercise. Exercise is so important.
Hmm.
And for me, it really means varying the exercise. Some of it is, I really do like the community that we have with Troy. And
Hmm.
the reason I do that is because I like being with the other people, and I like being with Troy. I think he's
Hmm.
an amazing leader in his space. He does a
Hmm.
great job. But I also love, we're in the mountains. I was cross country skiing yesterday. Love being out in nature. In the summertime, I will ride my bike.
Hmm.
I will downhill ski. I will just always be outside as much as I can. So I think it's the community of the exercise, and then it is the being in nature part of
Oh,
exercise that
cool.
is really valuable for me. And I am also a certified yoga instructor.
Oh, I
And
didn't know that.
yeah, and I don't teach yoga now,
Okay.
but I am grounded in that. And so I really, really do like to also integrate a yoga practice, whether it's going to a yoga studio, which now it is just 1 mile from my house, my new house, which is great.
Hmm.
Or I'll do it at home. But that's for me, it's that mind body community thing, how all that comes together. And then the last thing I do is I love to sing. I love to sing.
Oh, wow. What type of singing do you do?
I
Is
will do
just
well. I
anything?
always joke and say, I am the family funeral singer.
Okay.
It's true though.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
also sing at weddings, but I do sing at funerals.
Oh,
In college, I did, a cappella, a lot of
okay.
acapella stuff. Now I just sing in the church choir. Um,
Awesome.
but it's great. Again,
Hmm.
community
Yeah.
is something I love, right?
Hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
well, thank you, really. Thank you for sharing that. These your answers have been very different. I was expecting the skiing. That's the one I was expecting. But again, thank you so much for sharing, and thank you for taking the time to walk through the principles of the book. And I think it's really going to be helpful for a lot of folks in our community. So thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much for having me. I appreciate all the work that you do.
Thank you. Thanks for watching, and please be sure to like, subscribe, and rate the podcast on all major podcast platforms. We look forward to dropping more great conversations, and of course, sponsorship opportunities are available. Just contact us at MPHA. Thanks.